I was asked by a friend recently who is used to being a high capacity, continuous delivery kind of individual, right? For whatever reasons, some of us develop growing up the means to handle a lot of different input and process it quickly and be able to seemingly manage a lot of many different things either simultaneously or very quickly. And there comes a point for people who are very good at that they sometimes hit the bleeding edge of their own capacities. And when that occurs, they have to start thinking about what it is that has made them successful in their day-to-day routine and break it out into its pragmatical pieces once again to understand what they need to do to remain as effective as they have been previously in this new environment requiring more from them. So I've come up with this very simple philosophy, right? In Agile, I had learned that there's only really 6 hours in an effective 8-hour, or 6 effective hours in an 8-hour day. Studies show that it's actually growing less as more social aspects of elements are introduced to the job environment, right? As that occurs, of course, you become less effective, but what you create is a stronger culture to keep people there. So there are benefits, right? And the question is how much of one to get the other, or how little of the other to get the one. Anyway, I digress. This is talking about he said, you know, I got a whiteboard, I want to do basic Kanban, right? Which is define, doing, and done. And I said, yeah, I can help you with that. The way I look at this is simple. You have 6 effective hours in a day. Brain science says that the human mind is good at 3 or 4 big things at a time. So if I'm talking to you, I should have 3, maybe 4 big topics. When we are approaching our day, we think about 3, maybe 4 big things. There is the work day ahead, there is the social element of the day, and maybe the relationship or the fitness or whatever that 3rd thing or 4th thing might be, and the arts or whatever. And within each one of those categories, we then are prioritizing the work that we have to do and thinking about it in that task sense, right? If I'm going to be doing this at work, I have to do the following things. So how does this really break out? I have 6 effective hours in a given day. If there are 3 big things that I can do in a given day, right? So I have 1, 2, and 3, or 3 big things I can do within a given container, because 6 hours is all I have effective in any one of those containers, be it personal life, professional life, or social life, right? So if we think about breaking it down into those 3 simple categories, this is replicable at any one of those areas of your life. So let's say it's business life. I have 6 effective hours in a given day. There are 3 main tasks or themes of my day that I have to deal with. I work in customer success, so first of all, I have to understand the customers that I'm going to engage with, and what is the work I'm doing internally to support those customers I have to engage with, and then third, what are the outputs of those engagements that I have made that I have to then deliver internally or externally. So those are the 3 big priorities that I might face in a given day. But of those 3, my customer interface is always the first one. The second one is the work I have to do internally to ensure that I can interface with the customer. And then the third one is the delivery output. So if my customers are the first priority, I then have to think about who are my customers. Maybe I have 5 different customers I'm taking care of that day. Maybe there are 3 different things that those customers are requiring. So customer 1 wants, an hour of my life to talk on the phone, and I know that working with them is going to help advance their success in the platform. That becomes critical. The second one, who wants another hour of my life, is talking about, I need help just understanding the basics of my new role and how it interacts with this platform. And while they're important to me, they're a healthy enough customer, but not growing just yet. And maybe the third customer is asking for just 30 minutes of my time, and they just want to make sure that it's a sanity check. Do I have this right? Do I not have this right? Well, and that's neither really important or not very important. And then the last thing I have to do for another customer is actually an hour and a half of my time, right? Which then takes me to just some data work, right? Some research, getting back to them on questions that they've asked, right? So important, not as important, but important, not really important, but critical to the relationship. And then this is following up or providing due diligence on somebody who's asked some questions from me. All right, so now I've prioritized that work. But Jesse, this is just 4 hours of work. Yes, it's just 4 hours of work. In an 8-hour day, 6 hours are effective. This is roughly a 20% budget or a 20% gap, right? And that cushion is what we still need to keep in this day, because there are things that are going to be interjected in here from outside or external sources. And I'm always continually having to fit those in around these 4 primaries, right? So, and remember, 3 big ones and 1 little one, right? So that 4th one is not hard, it's just time consuming. So I've got this 2 hours to push around in here to help me talk to those people in here or whatever. So if I'm doing these questions, or if my internal work is onboarding, whatever the case might be there, I know that this is less important, but here there are still a series of priorities. Now, as I'm transitioning off of one of these, I'm moving on to one of these, or I may be moving over to one of these because it fits that I have to do this before I can get to that. So we're always moving these priorities around, and that's what those 2 hours are for, right? Is to figure out what of these other priorities I'm fitting in. So in my internal work, what I'm also looking at is getting the documentation. That documentation may take me an hour of my time, right? So that's another hour. And that's me interacting with people to get that information, right? I still have an hour left over. There's a half hour here that I've got to do an internal meeting maybe. And then over here in the least important, or the third most important element of this, which is my outputs, I've got a half an hour left to just do my emails. So you notice that if anything here shifts or changes and I lose that time, it can now get applied to either one of these other priorities, because there's nothing else in here to fill it. If there is, I'm going to fill it with a customer-facing priority first. But that's how we manage the day. This is daily creation, right? This is daily reality creation. Now, if I apply this in my personal life and I say that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I want to get out in the mountains and I want to maybe snowshoe, then I've got a different set of plans, right? I've got to make sure that if my primary goal is getting out into the mountains and doing some snowshoeing, right? I've got to make sure I've got the time to get out there. I've got the time to do the snowshoeing. I've got the time to recover from snowshoeing. I've got to make sure that my gear is important, right? That my vehicle has been filled up, and that, I've prepared for any emergencies that I might think are going to be there. And that prepares my day. I've got those 6 hours, and how am I going to use them? So I wake up in the morning and I understand the very first thing I need to do really is eat, prepare my gear, get in the vehicle, go fill it up, load it up with the gear, drive out, go do my hiking around, come back, clean up my gear, drive back, maybe grab some food on the way home. And this is daily reality creation. That's, while it is very simple in its concept, much like scrambled eggs, it's something that requires a great deal of practice and rigor before you get to. And as cheesy as it's going to sound, so habit retention. There's a lot of different things, you got to do something consistently for 21 days. I forget the other ones, but let's just focus on that one. What that means is one day at a time, you're trying to do those things. And by the time you're able to do it 21 days consistently, you've forgotten that you're trying to do it regularly. It's become embedded as a habit. So on day 1, I attempt this principle. I write my board and I say, what are the 3 big things I'm working on today? Blah, 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 blah. What are my categories of time? And I can even do this as saying, this is my personal life, or my professional life, my social life, and my personal life, and my 6 hours, my 6 hours, my 6 hours. So on this one board alone, I can represent either those 6 hours and my 3 priorities within those 6 hours, or those 6-hour buckets and the priorities within, and I can represent them as big blocks of time to say what those other 3 big things are. So we see this as scalable as well. I could write something on this, I suppose, but I'm lazy. That's it. That's the daily did 6, what I call the daily did 6. If you understand what your focus is that day in any one of these 3 categories, professional, personal, or social, and you have those three big priorities or themes of things that you're trying to get done within those three, and you only have 6 hours within each one of those, how then do you prioritize those things so that you're focusing on the right thing at the right time, and more critically, leaving time in between to stop doing the one and pick up the next? Because the more time that we compress between the two, the less time we have to give ourselves that breathing room. It's called context switching. We need to understand that sometimes that extra 20% of time is there just to do context switching, just to do processing. And context switching works like this, just to round this thing out so that this all kind of makes sense. Context switching is this. I can go out in my yard and I can rake leaves in the fall, and then realize I've got guests coming in 5 minutes and run inside, grab my broom and sweep. And the context switches only from outside to inside. The motions are the exact same thing, and the outcomes are the exact same thing. I am cleaning up what I perceive to be a litter, and I want to remove it from sight. All right, now let's change the context of the context switching. So we're going to switch context, and I'm going to explain the new context before we get there so that you've processed the change. I'm no longer talking about sweeping and raking. Now I'm going to talk about clock repair and automotive maintenance. So I'm out in the garage and I have disassembled my engine to the point where I can replace the head gasket, and I realize that I have promised to fix my mother's clock and have it for dinner, and I now have 3.5 hours left for that. And I know it's going to take me at least an hour and a half to fix her clock. Do I wait, or do I continue to work on the engine for another hour? No, I do not, because the thing about complicated engine work is that I have to tie off where I'm at. I have to leave myself reminders of what the next steps are going to be so that when I come back, it's easy for me to pick up where I left off and resume what I'm doing. So I have to put tools down, I have to clean up, and then I have to prepare the site for the next steps. Then I can walk away, and then I can go and I can approach the clock, and I can change my context. I can put on the glasses, I can bring the magnifying glass in, I can open up the case, I can break out the other tools, I can stretch a little bit, I can flex my fingers, because I'm going from something that is big and complicated to something that is small and complex. And I need the time to change how I approach those two different subjects. So that extra 20%, let's put that up there, because there's 2 free hours. Let's call them 2 radical hours that you get to play with. And I'm a big fan of saying that those 2 radical hours, 2RH, those 2 radical hours are those fillers that help you actually perform everything else that you're trying to do. We just try and think that we should plan that because it's spare time. There is no spare time. All time is used. The question is, are we using it as efficiently as we might? This allows you to use your time as efficiently and as effectively as you can to create the reality you want on any given day, and to even give you time left over to do unplanned, fun, random things, which is what life is really about, isn't it? So, all right, here you go. Hope that helped. If anybody needs any more information on this, just let me know. Thanks, bye.